If there was one thing about marriage that surprised Matthew, it was just how quickly he became accustomed to it. There's always the danger that a single person becomes so used to the bachelor or spinster routine that a sudden change in circumstances proves difficult to accommodate. Or so the folk wisdom goes. There is a similar piece of folk wisdom that claims that parents, on launching the last of their children, feel the loss acutely, rapidly declining into the empty nest syndrome. Both these beliefs are largely false. Married couples, or those choosing to live together as biddies in, and there is no more appropriate term to express that notion than this couthy Scots expression, both adjust remarkably quickly to the sharing of bed and board. Indeed, after a few days, in many cases, a previous life is more or less entirely forgotten, and each person believes that he and she, or he and he, or she and she, have lived together for a very long time. In this way, Daphnis and Chloe, or Romeo and Juliet, can only too quickly become Darby and Joan, Mr. and Mrs. Bennet, or any other famous domestic couple. As for the received view about the so-called empty nest syndrome, like many syndromes, it barely exists. In most cases, parents do feel a slight pang on the leaving of home by their children, but this pang tends to occur before the offspring go, and it is largely a dread of the syndrome itself rather than concern over the actual departure. In this way, it is similar to many of the moral panics that afflict an imaginative society from time to time. The fear of what might happen in the future is almost always worse than the future that eventually arrives. So when the child finally goes off to university, or takes a gap year, or moves out to live with coevals, the parents might find themselves feeling strange for a day or two, but often find themselves exhilarated by their new freedom. Very soon it feels entirely normal to have the house to yourself. Such is the rapidity with which most people can adjust to new circumstances. And of course, if the child has been reluctant to leave home and has remained there until his late 20s or even beyond, how much more grateful is the parent for this change. Empty nest syndrome, then, might be redefined altogether to refer to the feeling of anticipation and longing which affects those whose nest is not emptying quickly enough. For Matthew and his wife, Elspeth Harmony, the adjustment to married life was both rapid and thoroughly pleasant. Neither had the slightest doubt that the right choice had been made, not only in respect of deciding to get married at all, but also in their choice of partner. Matthew loved Elspeth Harmony. He loved her to the extent that everything that was associated with her, her possessions, her sayings, her friends and connections, were all endowed with a quality of specialness that attached to nothing else. The mug from which she drank her morning coffee was special because her lips had touched it. The tortoise-shell comb that she kept on top of the dressing-table was special because it had belonged to Elspeth's grandmother, rather than to any other grandmother. The shopping list that she wrote out to take with her to Valvona and Crola was special because it was in her handwriting. His affection for her was total and touching. For her part, Elspeth couldn't believe the sheer good fortune that had brought them together. She'd always wanted to get married, from her university days onwards, but as the years passed, and she was only 28 at the time of Matthew's proposal, she had become increasingly concerned that nobody would ask her. There had been one or two boyfriends, but they hadn't been serious, and her intuitive understanding of this had meant that the relationships had been brief. She saw no point, really, in persisting with a man who would not be with her in a year or two's time. Why invest emotional energy in something that wasn't expected to last? In her view, that led to disappointment and loss, and this could be avoided by simply not taking up with the man in the first place.